One of the questions I've been asked a lot lately is whether or not artificial intelligence can be used as a tutor for students. And of course, the answer is yes. AI can be used in pretty much any way that we need it to be used. It all starts with a question. So I had a faculty member approach me one day and ask the question about tutoring her students. She said that she had a higher than normal number of students that were at risk of failing their pathophysiology class. And she asked if there was anything that AI could do to help. Now, we all know that artificial intelligence tries its best, specifically generative AI, tries its best to give answers to questions. But we want it to lead the students in the right direction. We want it to evaluate the students' knowledge, identify gaps in their knowledge, and help them come to the conclusions on their own, and then validate those conclusions. So what we can do is build custom chatbots or custom GPTs to do exactly that. So what I'm going to show you in this video today is how we can use ChatGPT to create a custom GPT that's specifically designed to help a student prepare for a final exam. So whenever we start something like this, it all starts with a question. Like my faculty member came to me and said, ask about pathophysiology and students having at risk of not passing. Can AI help? So it starts with that question. So today we are going to use ChatGPT, and I'm going to show you how we can build a custom GPT that you can distribute to your students so that they can use it for whatever purpose you have determined necessary for the chatbot. So some requirements straight up. So if you're using ChatGPT, to create one of these custom GPTs requires the GPT Plus subscription from ChatGPT, which is $20 a month. And so that allows you to create those custom GPTs. Now, to consume those GPTs, all you use is the URL that's created whenever you create your chatbot. That's free. So your students can go to ChatGPT, they can sign in, they have to create a free account, but they can consume those GPTs, use them for free. So that's really the only caveat here. Once you sign up for that $20 version, you can create as many chatbots as you like, and then students can use them as much as they can within the limits of a free version of ChatGPT, which are pretty high. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how we build a custom GPT. It's going to help students learn something in healthcare. So I'm going to show you how to build the prompt, and then we're going to look at the knowledge base. How does it know how to answer? So let's get started. What I'm showing you here on the screen is just a folder that contains some documents that I may use in this class, and this is all fictitious. It's generated just specifically for this demo. So I've got four documents here that are used in this class. I've got two PDFs, a Word document, and a PowerPoint presentation. And then I have a transcript that is a transcript of a conversation. And this conversation can be just you talking about what you want from the chatbot or what you want it to do, or it can be you and your team determining what it is you want the chatbot to do. So I typically use these to create my prompts. So let's go in and start building a custom GPT, and then you'll see what's necessary as we step in along the way. So here I am in ChatGPT. I've logged in with my account. Now, to create a custom GPT, we need to make sure that we see the left side here, and you see there's a listing of all the custom GPTs that I've created. The most popular one that I've created so far is Nurse Blaze. It helped a series of students in a pathophysiology class at UAB prepare for their final exam. And this was not, it didn't have any final exam information in it. It was just trained on everything they've already learned in the class. So it helped reiterate what they were doing. So if you go to GPTs, up at the top right corner, click Create. And so it gives you an interface. This is two sides. The left side is where you create the GPT. The right side gives you a preview of it. So you can just give it a prompt here and tell it what you want it to do. I like to go into the configure side and just configure this step by step. So what I'm going to do is just call this chatbot tutor. So there's a name. And as I'm typing, you'll see the previews populating over here on the right side. The description. This chatbot is created to help students learn and prepare for a final exam and I think there's different topics in these use cases, but something like cardiology. There we go. All right. And so then you can put in your instructions. So this is your prompt, just like if you were typing in a prompt in a regular chatbot like ChatGPT. This is your prompt. So how do you want it to perform? The way that I like to do these, I like to make these as detailed as possible, but this is where the transcript comes in. So have that conversation, record it on your phone or record it in Zoom, but get that transcript of that conversation of what you'd like your chatbot to do. So I'm going to show you what this transcript looks like. So it's a transcript, it's a conversation between two nurse educators, Dr. Lopez and Dr. Patel. And so they're saying, so for this exam prep chatbot, I don't want it just spitting out the answers when students ask. That defeats the purpose of studying. Dr. Patel says, exactly. We want the chatbot to push students up Bloom's taxonomy. If they're just recalling facts, the bot should nudge them and to explain or apply what they know before it gives direct answers. So it continues down the line. They also talk about they wanted to validate the students' feelings. If they are feeling worried, they're going to fail the test, validate their feelings, and shift back to the content. So don't just dismiss what they're feeling, but let them know that everything's okay and we're going to get through it. So that's what the whole thing is. This is a very brief transcript. So what I'm going to do is take that transcript, and I already have a prompt that I've pre-created here. So this is very typical of what I would do. Act as an expert prompt engineer and a seasoned nurse educator. So that tells the AI who it is and what it's going to do. And here's the task. Today, we're creating a new custom GPT to help our students with final exam prep. Please take this transcription of a conversation about a chatbot and create a prompt to use in the chatbot. So, one of the superpowers of generative AI, artificial intelligence, is the ability to have it create ideal prompts. So you don't have to write prompts, you can use it to create prompts. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing, and I'm going to bring up a new version of ChatGPT, start a new chat here, and I'm just going to paste that whole transcript along with the prompt here. So that's what I've got, and I'll send it up to the AI, and it says, here's a polished system prompt, and I'll take you through just the different sections that it creates. It starts, you're an empathetic exam prep coach for nursing students. Your purpose is to help students prepare for the final exam by guiding them through deeper thinking rather than simply giving answers. Now, you see, this is very generic. It just says prepare them for their final exam. It doesn't say anything about cardiology. It doesn't say anything about diabetes, pathophysiology, pharmacology. None of that stuff is here. That's where you fill in the information from the class that you're teaching and what you're trying to prepare them for. So you tell the prompt, whenever you're generating the prompt up here, what it is you're generating. Maybe you put in your objectives, your course description, your title, any information that may be helpful in it generating the prompt. So it says your approach as the tutor, Bloom's taxonomy progression, encouragement and scaffolding, empathy and support, coaching, not shortcuts. So I'm going to copy everything here from UR, where we're setting up the role for the AI, all the way down here. Because you see there's a little bit of opening that's talking to you where you're asking the question for it to create the prompt. Here's a polished system prompt. There's the actual prompt, and then this is just a conclusion. Would you like me to also write a student-facing introductory message? So yeah, you can if you want, and that you could put that in the chat bot as the description. But I'm just going to copy the prompt that it created, go back over to my bot, and paste it. And you can click the two arrows on the bottom right corner of this window to blow it up so that you can see the entire screen here. All right. So don't worry about the formatting. Bloom's taxonomy progression, encouragement, and scaffolding, all that was bolded. Don't worry about the formatting. The natural language processing capabilities of the generative AI system can process all this text. It doesn't need the formatting, so don't worry about that. So I'm just going to hit close here. Just keep in mind that it says conversations with the GPT can potentially include part or all of the instructions provided. So make sure you take care not to put anything that's going to be on the final exam or what you want them to take, what you're preparing them for. because it may surface that in the interactions with the students. Just give them the prep work, everything building up to what you're preparing them for. Then we have conversation starters. These are if the student comes into the chat bot and just doesn't know what to ask, you can give them things that they can ask. I am completely lost and don't know what to do. Please help me. So that's just starting with nothing, and then the AI will work with that. You can put in a second one. You'll notice as I'm typing, it gives us a box here, so they can just pick that box and then run with it. I would like to know more about the processes behind pediatric cardiology or something like that, depending on what the course is. And you can keep adding those things and it'll keep lining them up. It just gives the students a place to start. Then we get into our knowledge base. So if you have files in your class, study guides, anything that the students can use to learn to study in the class, provide that to the chatbot. Because at this point, we're going to train the chatbot not on what it knows in its underlying model, but specifically what you're doing in class. So I'm going to pick upload files, and I'm going to go pick the 4 files that I pre-downloaded that I'm using in this fictitious class and pick open. So I can go ahead and you can add in any documents that you have access to in your class to use this in the chatbot. So I've added in others, I've added in 12, 15 different files. Just keep in mind that if they're massive files, that it could take a while to upload, it take a while to process. Also, if you have copywritten textbooks, I would be careful with uploading that. If you don't have permission to upload copywritten material, don't upload that. Now, you do have the ability, once you're done with this, to delete these files, and it'll take it out. And then at the very bottom, we have additional settings where you can tell it whether or not you want it to use the information in this chatbot to train the models for OpenAI for ChatGPT, and you can allow or disallow that. But for right now, I'll just put this in here. So just be careful, don't use any textbooks if you don't have permission to use those textbooks. The recommended model, just leave it at no recommended model. That way the student can select which model they'd like to use depending on how they have access to ChatGPT. I would uncheck the capabilities here because you don't want it to do a web search necessarily. That can lead to more hallucinations or the ability of an AI to generate what looks like factual content, but is in fact incorrect content. So I would take off the web search, I would take off the canvas, because the students aren't using this to write, the students are just using this to learn. And then image generation, they may not be doing any, may not be creating any imagery. If in the course of their study, they have to create an image of, say, maybe they're studying neonatology and they're studying different skin conditions for neonates. Maybe they could use an image generation to see what that looks like whenever they're learning about it. But for right now, I'm taking that off too. They're not going to do any coding or data analysis for this chatbot, so I took that off. And then down here at the bottom, there's use conversation data in your GPT to improve our models. Go uncheck that. That'll make sure that none of the information that's used in these chats are used to train the OpenAI models. So just go and check that. All right. So now once you're done here, we've got our instructions, we have our conversation starters, our name, our description, we have our knowledge base articles, we've got the fact that we're not going to use this to train our models. If you wanted to go in and have a little bit of fun with the image, you could click the plus sign up at the top here, and you can either upload a graphic that represents what your chatbot is, or you could have their AI generation system create an image for you by using DALL-E. So that's kind of fun. You might want to go in and play around with that once you get it done. Not really necessary, but instead of showing a cube here, it'll actually show an image. I'm going to hit create on the top right corner here. And so once you do that, it's asking you how do you want to share this GPT. And so I would say pick anyone with the link. If you use only me, that means that only the person that creates it would have access to the chatbot. You couldn't share this out. We don't want that. You want to be able to share this with your students and your colleagues. I wouldn't put it into the GPT store because somebody could go out and search for it and then have access to that GPT in the store. So don't select GPT store if you're just using this for your students. Just pick anyone with the link and then hit save. So now it's creating the custom chatbot. It is generating the link that we can use to share. and then in just a moment it'll be done. All right, so here is the URL. You can pick copy here. That's going to copy the link to the clipboard. So that's what you would use, say, in Canvas, your learning management system. If you're going to share this out with your students, or if you wanted to send an announcement to your students, you could put the URL there, and then they can open it up in the browser of their choice and then interact with chatbot. So if I pick View GPT, it'll open up the GPT behind the scenes here. And so now I can start interacting with the chatbot. And then whenever you share the link out, I'm going to go just bring up a incognito window here in this browser and then paste the URL. So this is the URL for this specific chatbot that you would share with your students. And if I run it, it's going to say chatbot tutor, sign up to chat. So that's where the students would create their own account and then log in and then have access to this for free. So then they can start interacting with it. But over here in my preview, what I would do next is after you have created the GPT, you have your URL. You can always go up here and copy this URL too. If you forget what your URL is, just go into the chatbot and then copy the URL at the top and then share that out. Then you go in and start what I would consider a pilot. So roll this out, start testing it yourself first. Take the role of a student, ask questions, be a completely lost student. Like if you wanted to go in and pick, I'm completely lost and don't know what to do, please help me. That's one of the conversation starters. So here's how it's responding now. It sounds like you're feeling really overwhelmed right now. It's completely normal facing something as big as final exams. Here's the general first step to get your brain warmed up. Let's begin with something foundational and not too heavy. So it's sort of easing this uneasy student into this process. Tell me, when you think about the conduction systems of the heart, SA node, AV node, bundle of HIS, his, and so forth, what do you recall about the role of the SA node? So you see how it's stepping us into Bloom's taxonomy. And so we're going to start small, and then it's going to evaluate the student. See, it's not giving the student what SA node is. If the student just doesn't know what an SA node is, they can ask the question and it'll help them understand, and then it'll move them forward. So test it first, then roll it out to some of your colleagues, have them take the role of the student, ask it questions. If something happens and they say, yeah, this is good, but we need to change something, the way you change one of these tutors, you can't just go into the chatbot tutor here on the left side and the listing of all of your GPTs, because if you list here, you just have a hide. What you have to do is go into, once again, GPTs, go to at the top right corner, remember you clicked create before, you're going to now click my GPTs because this is an existing custom chatbot, and then chatbot tutor, and we'll pick edit GPT. So if you have to make any modifications, if you have to remove a document, add a document, if you want to add more conversation starters, change the name, change the description, that's how you do it. So you can go in and make changes here and then just pick update. Use the same URL. You don't have to change anything in your learning management system or in your emails. The URL still sticks, but just hit update and that'll update your chatbot. All right. So yeah, pilot it, make sure that it's ready to go. So once you make any updates to it, have your team test it again, or you test it as a student, see how well it goes. And then once you're ready to roll it out to a larger number of testers, maybe to a small group of students, and see what they think. Give that a try. So that is pretty much it in creating a chatbot tutor. Now, whenever you're using this, you can delete the chatbot anytime you'd like. So the same way that we did before, whenever you go into GPTs on the left side, my GPTs, and you click edit GPT, you click the three dots here, go to delete GPTs, and that would just delete it. That would take out all the documents, all the prompts and everything. All that would be gone. Students would no longer have access to it. So that is a way that you can get rid of those GPTs whenever you're done with them. So I hope this has been helpful. This has been really popular where I teach. We've created many of these. So please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to chat with you. Thank you.